Hey everyone! Welcome to Steven Universe, the show where we talk about the universe of Steven Universe. I'm your host, Victor Frost, and it's day 3 of Steven Bomb 2, Electric, a Boogaloo. If you're new to the show, while we usually have Steven Universe related news and reviews of fan-created works, during Steven Bombs we just examine the latest episode. Our regular format will resume once the Steven Bomb is finished. That being said, it's time for us to look at the latest episode and see what we learned. If you haven't yet seen the episode Keeping It Together, this is your chance to pause this video, go watch that one, then come back. Don't worry, we'll wait. This is your spoiler alert. New episode, new lore. Let's see what we learned. The first thing this episode very quickly verifies is that Pearl is at Danny Tanner levels of clean freak. Also, she has very nice handwriting, as to be expected. Okay, I had my fun yesterday. Serious mode. If you've only just watched the latest episode, I hope the joke I made earlier about Danny Tanner and stuff served as the palate cleanser it was meant to be. Because that was a pretty jarring episode. And what we need to do right now is push past the feels and look at the episode for what it was. A message. This episode didn't do much in terms of moving the plot. Yes, Peridot is closer to accomplishing whatever she's set out to do, but that's been happening all this time. The gems didn't catch her, she's still loose out there, her work wasn't even disturbed. The quo is decidedly still status. The only thing different is that now we know about it. The only thing different is that we, the audience and the characters, have been given information. If this episode could be distilled into one message, it's this. Fans, the homeworld isn't a big bad to sympathize with. They're not relatively bad, not just one of two sides in a civil war-like conflict with cultures we don't understand or are missing information about. They are actually, currently, with no respect to past events, bad. Full stop. Is this a value judgment? Yes, absolutely. But while the term value judgment is typically used to indicate that a position isn't sound or is constrained by the limited thinking that arises from being exposed to one or similar cultures, this is about as non-judgmental a position that you can pull with the information we have regarding the home world, and gems in general. Let's examine the facts. Number 1, gems, despite being functionally immortal, are not immutable. They can be killed. They place value on the safety and lives of themselves and others, and act in defense of themselves in order to stay alive. They, in other words, value life. Number 2, they consider their physical gems as their truest self. They can change their projected forms like we can change clothes, but like their gems, this is me. This is the only me there'll ever be. Their individual gems, like our bodies, is the only concrete link that binds all of their different appearances, and it holds an inherent value to them as that unique factor. With these 2 points, it's incredibly reasonable to assume that a broken gem is the same to them as a corpse is to us, the last remaining sign of a now gone life, a sacred thing to be treated respectfully. We see this again and again, but in no way so prevalent as the very process they undergo when they encounter a monster. Poof it and bubble it so it can stay safe until they find a way to undo the damage. With this information in mind, we can move on to the last point. Number 3. The experiments run by Peridot, which, as far as we know, is her current operational objective, involves taking the shattered pieces of broken gems and fusing them together into what can only be described as Frankensteinian abominations for unknown reasons. Now, whether this is the end objective itself, a predetermined step in her overall mission, or a improvised means to aid her in accomplishing her mission, this desecration of gem remains is objectively, based on the principles established before, wrong. Now, what a person deems acceptable to do tells you a lot about them and the culture they're from. From Peridot's actions, we have basically 3 possible situations that could explain this behavior. Number 1, Peridot is acting outside the norm for a homeworld gem. Number 2, there's a splinter cell inside the homeworld government that condones these acts. Or 3, the homeworld gem governance at large is accepting of these horrible acts and condones and authorizes them. We can safely ignore the first option because I doubt Peridot would be making logs of what she's doing if Gem Society at large would be as upset as Garnet was. Those logs are meant to go somewhere after all. Really, only options 2 and 3 are feasible because it would take an organization with access to the kinds of resources we've seen thus far to deploy those resources. Unless these are commonplace and plentiful, which I doubt, but do we really know? No. And one more thing. Those shards, they were crystal gems. Garnet recognized them as such. Her horror at all of this, that gripping, paralyzing, debilitating horror, came from the fact that Peridot was effectively committing bastardized necromancy on her fallen comrades. When they get their hands on Peridot, I can guarantee you that Garnet is going to be none too charitable in her treatment as Peridot as a captive, if she even makes it back as a captive. Once again, we've got an episode that leaves us with more questions than answers, though I suppose that's what keeps us coming back. But if it hasn't been pounded into us firmly enough already, we know now for sure. The homeworld gems who sent Jasper and Peridot to Earth are bad people. That's what we learned this time on Steven Universe. Come back tomorrow to see what we learned from the episode We Need to Talk. I'm Victor Frost, and I'll see you next time on Steven Universe.